Hello, and welcome back to another edition of All or Not According to Jack with your host, Jack Toledano. Yes, I have been away for about a week or so. I haven't really done any recordings. Like to first apologize for that because you know what? Unfortunately, this is not a traveling show. Um, I used to be able to record using Zoom on my laptop, but I no longer have that ability because my company gave me a new laptop, but did not give me Zoom, so I can't record. So unfortunately, any recordings you see while I'm out on the road or with this iPhone, and it's basically relegated to on location type stuff like what I did when I went to this place a week ago. Changing the virtual background. This place, the Baseball Hall of Fame. Uh, was it a week ago Saturday? And what a wonderful, wonderful place it is. Of course, this picture depicts the Baseball Hall of Fame at Christmas time, which it obviously wasn't. Uh, Turns out I went during what the heck is it? Induction week. So I'm going to share really quick. Um, let's share. Let's get there. All right. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of the pictures that I took at the Hall of Fame. So I'm just going to go through them quickly. Todd Helton was inducted. The famous fight between Pete Rose and Buddy Harrelson, which is going to be my topic for this evening. My father saw this picture and fell in love with it, so I'm going to have to buy it for him. Somebody on the Cincinnati Reds who was inducted. We'll talk about this marvelous catcher of the Cincinnati Reds as well. Babe Ruth. Me hating on the Philly fanatic. Just kidding. Hank Aaron, another favorite of mine. Hank's uniform. The San Diego Chicken. So this is remember this picture for later as we talk about Mr. Charlie Hustle. This is me outside the hall, Babe Ruth's uniform, Casey Stengel. Can anybody play this game? The Iron Horse, Lou Gehrig, Willie Say Hey Willie, the Mets. This picture right here. This is a picture that I took of Pete Rose, who was signing autographs last Saturday. So, which brought forth my whole idea, ironically. So, let's stop sharing for a little bit. So, I went to the Hall of Fame last Saturday, saw Pete Rose. I actually bought a souvenir at that same store, which I'll show you a little bit later. So then I'm at my upstate home. Now we don't have cable, but we have a whole bunch of apps, like we have Hulu and we have HBO Max. We have Netflix. We have a few others. So I was flipping through Max, and I actually almost accidentally came across this four-part miniseries that they played on HBO called Charlie Hustle and the Matter of Pete Rose. 4 episodes. And you know what? Fantastic is all I can say. It was, four-parter. Now, if you had asked me prior to this year if I think that Pete Rose should be inducted into the Hall of Fame, I probably would have said no. But you know what? As this episode goes through, my opinion might change, and I'll give you a little commentary towards the end. But you know, let's talk about that a little bit. So let's share about Mr. Pete. Let's go back and share again. Okay, so let's stop that. Pete Rose. So Pete Rose, great ball player. My memories of Pete. Uh, so watching the series, came up in the 60s. Uh, he was never a great player, but he had one thing that other people didn't have. He hustled. He hustled his ass off. Hence the name some other ball players gave him this derisive term, Charlie Hustle, kind of poking fun at him. But you know what? Took it as a badge of honor. He he was a great player. He he was the MVP of a few seasons, in the 70s. So my first memories of Pete Rose, stop sharing again. Um, so I became a baseball fan in 1973. I became a fan of this team because I had a neighbor next door. So we moved out from Queens out to the suburbs in the spring of 72. So within that year, my next door neighbor, who was 3 years older than me, I'd say he was very influential. We played baseball a lot. We played football out in the street a lot. Uh, he was always talking baseball with me. He was probably, between that and my father putting me in Little League. Prior to that, I was not into baseball, but my father putting me into Little League, I slowly developed the love of the game. Uh, Plus, I slowly, based on my neighbor, John was his name, um, I started to basically like the Mets. And funny thing happened in 73. They made this push into the playoffs, and they made it to the playoffs in 73. And who did they face? The Big Red Machine, Cincinnati Reds, a great team. I mean, you had catcher Johnny Bench. You saw his jersey before, number 5. Tony Perez, great hitting, power hitting third baseman and first baseman. Second baseman, Joe Morgan, great power hitting second baseman, and uh, hit for power and had great speed. Shortstop, Davy Concepcion, uh, defensive shortstop, great hitting shortstop. Who else? Later on would come George Foster, Cesar Geronimo, Dan Dreesen, uh, to name a few. So they had a really stacked ball club, and but the Mets had something that they didn't have in 73. They had Tom Seaver, Jerry Kuzman, John Matlack, who came up with some really big games and upset the Reds in 73 playoffs. Uh, of course, we had weak hitting Bud Harrelson, who got into that fight with Pete Rose, and hence Pete Rose was public enemy number one every time they would come back to Shea Stadium. So my first game ever. Uh, so my grandfather belonged to this Greek Jewish organization called the Pashas, and they had an event in 1974 to go to a Met game. And I had always been begging my father, please take me to a Met game. This was after we moved away from Flushing, of all things. So finally, my wish came true. I think it was August 9th of 74. He got us 4 tickets to go to the game with the Pashaws. We saw none other than the Cincinnati Reds against the New York Mets, Chase Stadium. Uh, who ended up pitching for the Mets in that game? It wasn't Kuzman, wasn't Seaver, wasn't Matlack. It was this journeyman, starter reliever named Bob Apodaca, whose name would surface later on. He was he would become a Mets coach, and he was a relief pitcher, but he pitched great ball that game. He 7 innings of shutout ball. I went into that game fully expecting that the Mets were going to lose. Of course, they weren't very good in '74, um, but they won that. They nursed a 1-0 lead into the 7th inning when light hitting center fielder Don Hahn, of all people, hits a home run to right center field, makes it 4-0. The Reds' only run in that game was uh, was a Johnny Bench solo home run in the 9th inning. So Mets win that game 4-1. So that's my first memory of the Mets and the Reds. Uh, we ended up 77. That was the year of the Midnight Massacre, where the M. Donald Grant, general manager jackass that he was, gutted our team, traded away Tom Seaver, traded away Dave Kingman. There went our franchise and our power hitter. Um, so so we went to another Pashaz event, and it was against, again, none other than the Cincinnati Reds. This time it was a twilight doubleheader. Of course, the Mets lost both games that day against the Reds, 4-1 and 4-3. I know what's his name, George Foster, clubbed 2 home runs in that doubleheader. Uh, One Ken Griffey Sr. also homered in that game. Uh, Foster, was the first player in my recollection for me to ever see hit 50 home runs or more. But so those are my memories. But getting back to Pete Rose, what can I talk about? So this was a great series. They talked about episode 1. They talked pretty much Pete Rose from the early '60s through the '70s, and playing with the Cincinnati Reds, and getting upset in 1970 to the Baltimore Orioles in the World Series, getting upset in '72 to the Oakland A's in the World Series in 7 games, getting upset in '73 to the New York Mets in the NLCS, '75, '74, losing out to the Dodgers in the National League Division, Western Division race. Let's go Mets. '75, winning the division, sweeping the Pittsburgh Pirates in the NLCS. My recollection of that World Series, that was the first time my family, my dad, bought us a color television set. This was October of '75. So I actually got to watch that World Series in color. Uh, and it was a great series. Cincinnati Reds, Boston Red Sox, a series that went to 7 games. And at that time, when I wasn't rooting for the Mets, I was rooting for the Cincinnati Reds. And what did they do? They won that series in 7 games. So very exciting series. So 1976, they swept my hated Philadelphia Phillies in the NLCS. Then, at that time, and I was not a Yankee fan. I had this friend, lived on my block, was always, comparing the New York Mets to the New York Yankees, and I hated that because I knew my team was bad. Uh, uh, I hated when he was always comparing Thurman Munson to Johnny Bench, who was better. Oh, he's a better hitter and he's a better catcher and blah blah blah. But it was such a beautiful thing when the Cincinnati Reds swept the the New York Yankees in '76. So I was, of course, they started showing increasingly more World Series games on the weekdays at night, so I couldn't watch the games. Some of those games I had to go to bed for school, um, but I heard that they swept, and it was a beautiful thing. Uh, I do remember, and this is not related to Pete Rose or the Reds. Um, 77 was the year of Mr. October, Reggie Jackson. I did see the three homer game. That was a late afternoon game on the weekend. So thankfully, knock on wood, I got to watch that game. And I got to see Mr. October kick some ass and hit those three home runs into the black, the Yankee Stadium black, or the last one at least. Uh, and they won that series. But getting back to Pete Rose, um, was it 79? I think he went to the Philadelphia Phillies. They talk in this series about how he went to Philadelphia. Mike Schmidt, home run king extraordinaire for the Phillies, who was always battling Dave Kingman of the Mets for supremacy of home run hitting in the National League in those '70s. Uh, Schmidt usually came out on top, but he was talking about how he doesn't think that the Philadelphia Phillies could have won that 1980 World Series if it wasn't for them acquiring Pete Rose via, I don't know if it was trade or it was free agency, but it's a beautiful thing. Great player. Uh, so my other recollections of Pete Rose, so I think it was '85. He became player manager of the Cincinnati Reds. Um, so he finally took himself out of the lineup. Uh, '88, I think it was. He, my parents, so Sue and I, we had our own apartment in Nassau County prior to us getting married. We married in '89. '88, I think we had my parents over for dinner, and the Mets were playing the Reds that night. And this was actually, I think it was a Reds home game. Um, this was the game where Pete Rose got, and we're watching this, so um, there was a bad call at first base, and the umpire, he, I wouldn't say took his time, but he was a little indecisive. He made a late call, calling the runner for the Mets safe, and that resulted, I think, in a run. And of course, Pete and the coach were irate. They, you know, Pete comes out and he's like in the umpire's face, and he's pointing his finger, and the umpire gave some back to him, and pointing his finger back at Rose. I think he made contact with Rose's cheek or something. Next thing you know, Rose shoves the umpire. My dad and I are watching this. Shoves the umpire. He's immediately tossed. Gets a month suspension. So that was incident number two with the Mets and the Reds. Incident number three, I think. What was that incident number three? There was another incident where I think '85 or '86 or '87. I don't remember which year, but Ray Knight of the Mets got into a fight with Eric Davis of the Reds at third base. So I think Davis kind of nudged Knight at third base. Next thing, Knight takes a swing, connects with uh, Eric Davis's jaw, and all hell breaks loose. Bench is clear. I don't think, surprisingly, I don't think Pete Rose ever left the dugout. I was surprised by that. But on the other side was George Foster, former Red, who never left the dugout for the Mets, and that made him um, persona non grata on the Mets. So I think it was 85 because it was prior to the year they went to the World Series. Of course, he was gone by then, but I think that made him persona non grata, and he was gone soon after that. Um, Last instance, and I was at this fucking game in July of '89. Um, the Mets were winning big against the Cincinnati Reds. This is a game at Shea, so Sue and I were there. My brother Andrew was there. My parents were there. Some of my in-laws were there. This was like a real family event. This was a great game. Uh, Mets basically ran the score up on the Reds. Big Darryl Strawberry home run that day. I think he hit like a 2 or 3 run homer into, you know, just just short of the scoreboard in right center field, but uh, never expected there to be a bench clearing brawl in that game. So Tim Tuffle, Mets second baseman, uh, goes 4 for 4 that day. Uh, his fifth at bat, uh, Rob Dibble, Cincinnati Reds relief pitcher, flamethrower, throws a ball, hits him right in the friggin' middle of the back. Uh, I think all 45,000 people knew that it was intentional. So Dibble, cocky, arrogant, stupid ass that he was, he walks from the mound halfway to home plate to retrieve the ball or to get another ball from the umpire. Next thing, Tuffle pushes past the catcher, goes and clocks him right in the jaw. Next thing, the the both benches cleared, both bullpens emptied, and again, I don't think Pete Rose ever left the dugout. Um, Unbelievable. And I and 45,000 others and my family witnessed this. To this day, I will never forget it. It was incredible. Uh, this wouldn't be my only bench clearing brawl. I would see another in, I think it was 1994, but that's a story. That was between the Mets and the Atlanta Braves, but that's a story for another day. But little did I know, a month later, P. Rose would be banned from baseball. Why was he banned? Because they say that he was he was gambling. It comes up in this story called Charlie Hustle and the Matter of Pete Rose. Like I said, it's a 4-part miniseries on HBO. Um, that here's a guy, and I guess after he retired from, even before he retired, he was a guy who was very competitive. He loved the action. He loved to gamble. He bet on the ponies. He bet on football. He bet on baseball. He bet any which way you like. But little did he know, gambling on baseball when you're a baseball manager, betting on your own team is a cardinal sin. Uh, Need I remind you that in this building, there's a man that was basically back in the 20s. He and 8 of his teammates were banned from baseball. They call it the Black Sox scandal. And they talk about it in the Hall of Fame. Uh, they talk about all these stories and these legendary stories. Shoeless Joe Jackson was his name. He and 8 others basically were caught fixing the World Series. I think it was the 1919 World Series. They called it the Black Sox scandal. So as a result, he and 8 others were permanently banned from the game. Uh, their their reasoning behind it was to protect the integrity of the game. They didn't want it to become another professional wrestling. They they wanted this game to blossom and succeed. I mean, uh, here it is 2024 and the game is still a game. You still have, 40, 50,000 going to a lot of these games. And lucky me, I went last Saturday. The streets were crowded in the city of Cooperstown. I mean, it was so freaking crowded for this induction. People are paying upwards of $40 to park their freaking car. Uh, I wouldn't do that. I walked at least a half a mile to down the street to the hall be, because I wouldn't pay that. I paid 20 to park, but I was there. It took me an hour and a half to drive there from my upstate home, so I was not to be denied. So where was I? So yeah, so their reasoning is, you know what? Anybody who bets on baseball, there's a risk that he not only would he bet for his team, but there's a chance he might bet against his team. And as a manager, he might make some decisions that would basically be a conflict of interest with his gambling habit. So, for example, there might be a game where he might use a instead of using the best relief pitcher to try and win a game, he might use somebody who's been struggling that he know might give up the winning run, or might, he might put a pinch hitter, or he might use a lineup that he might not run the best lineup out there to try and win the game. So those are the rationale why they had banned Pete Rose from the game. So they never. So there's this called the Dowd report, I believe it was called, so that they mounted all this evidence against him. Phone calls, gambling, all things that he did. They it was basically a 226-page report. So there were hearings. So without actually voting on it, Pete Rose agreed to to a lifetime ban. But in his mind, he was thinking that in a year they'll hear my case and they'll reinstate me, and then I'll be eligible for the hall again, and I'll be eligible to return to the game of baseball. But that did not happen. So instead, uh, and here we are in, I don't know, 2015, 2018. They're, you know, here they are. They he's banned from the game, but meanwhile they have his number 14 jersey in Cooperstown, in the hall, for fuck's sake. I mean, that's a little, how would you say, uh, what's not a conflict of interest, but that's a little bit, some hypocrisy. That's hypocrisy number one. That here you have the man's jersey in your building. Uh, so meanwhile down the street, and granted, you know what? These these um, these stores are free enterprise. You have all these memorabilia stores, all these stores selling jerseys, selling bats, selling baseball cards, selling all sorts of memorabilia. And I got to tell you, I enjoyed going into those stores just as much as I enjoyed going into the hall. So, but so getting to my souvenir that I bought in the very same store that Pete Rose was signing autographs that day, I didn't know what to buy myself, and I honestly, my first thing that I wanted to buy was a Jerry Seinfeld baseball related shirt that I had seen on Facebook advertised as being sold in one of the stores in Cooperstown. I did not see that. Instead, I saw this. Let me take it out of the case. This, my friends, is the 1986 World Championship replica ring of the New York Mets. You can't see it very well, but it is a Darryl Strawberry replica ring. So I'm going to put it on so you can see it. So I never had a high school ring. I never had a college ring. I couldn't afford it. Uh, I finally got an Oddfellow ring a few years back, but that now pales in comparison to this. You know what? I never wanted to spend the kind of money that in fairness to my family, I don't think it would be fair to them that I spend 2, 3, 5 grand on a ring like this with all the bells and whistles and gold and diamonds and whatnot. So I got this replica, which is basically an alloy cubic zirconium, but it's a look-alike. It looks very nice. So if I go to a Met game, it's going to kind of look kind of flashy, and people are going to like it. So everybody I've shown this to, they kind of laughed, but they still like, you know what? Wear it in good health, enjoy. So that was my big souvenir. After all, I lived the 1986 season. I agonized through that playoff series against the Houston Astros. That's a tale for another day. I agonized through that World Series against the Boston Red Sox, but they persevered against both teams and got the ring. So there we are. Uh, Next step is for Jason and I to buy New York Giants football rings. Of course, we persevered through a couple of gifted seasons as well. 2007, 2011, 1990, 1986 was a given. They basically they basically ran roughshod through the freaking. They marched through that season and they basically routed everybody. So that first Super Bowl was a foregone conclusion. The other three, they were underdogs and they were real gifts. So, okay, back to Pete Rose. So, um, parts 3 and 4 were primarily to talk about, you know, you know, Pete Rose did a lot of, how would you say, a lot of, I wouldn't say low self-loathing, but a lot of, lamenting about the fact that he just didn't make it into the Hall of Fame, and he's ineligible, so he can't even get voted in. Uh, he wants to work for the game in some capacity again. Right now, he's basically making a living selling his autographs. I was a little put off by the fact that if I took a picture and yeah, let me find this picture. Uh, Gotta find this picture. Just bear with me a second. Was it? I think it would. Yes. Here we go. So, Safe at Home is the name of the store where not only Pete Rose but his former teammate Tony Perez were signing autographs. Pete was there that Saturday. Uh, um, Tony was there that Sunday, I believe. But listen to this, folks. So, your ball or photo signature, $75. Your bat or jersey, $100. Photo op on your device, basically your cell phone, $75. Your rookie card, $495 to sign a freaking rookie card. Jesus Christ. Basic inscription, I guess, I don't know what the hell that means, 25. Premium inscription, 100. Okay. Basic inscription examples to your name, in quotes, hit king, 1963 Rookie of the Year, 1973 NL MVP. Yeah, these are inscriptions. So he's charging extra for a fucking inscription to say not only sign my name, Pete Rose, but 1973 NL MVP. That's another added $75. They towards the end, I think season 4, they talked about the fact that here this guy was clearing $20,000 a day signing these goddamn autographs, and he was making over 3 million a year. Oh my God! Wow, I went into the wrong line of work, folks. Uh, wow. So, for example, his former teammate Tony Perez, your ball of photo $60, your bat or jersey $80, photo on your device $60, inscription $30. So that was that. Insane. And the fact of the matter is, people actually do it. Fortunately, I was able to get a picture and nobody caught me and nobody chased me out of there. Thank God for that. Uh, I'm not big on autographs. I mean, granted, I got the autographs of Judas Priest when I met them, but it wasn't about the autograph. I wanted to meet them and I wanted to get a picture, but that wasn't going to happen. But at least I got to meet them and talk to them for maybe make a sentence or two. But that was that. Uh, Funny dream that I once had. And this is an idea for a future episode. Back when I was a kid and I was a Kiss fan, I once had a dream that I asked Ace Frehley for his autograph, and he turns to me and says, "That'll be $10. That'll be $10, Curly." Little did I know that that would become such a big business in years later. And guys like Pete Rose and Darryl Strawberry are the ones who really started it, charging money for autographs. I would have never dreamed that as a kid. Uh, I mean, I've gotten some autographs. I think I had Ed Kranepool's autograph on a baseball card. Dave Winfield, I got his autograph. Ray Burris, um, I think John Stearns, a few other Mets. Felix Millan. In fact, yeah, Felix Felix Millan signed Felix Millan signed my Seinfeld bobblehead right there for free in the Mets museum before they freaking took it down. Shame on you, Uncle Steve. But so getting back to Charlie Hustle once again, Pete Rose. So the last point that I want to make. So, and this is a true story. About a year or two ago. Sorry, my boss, who uh, who I actually went to a game with about a year or two ago. It might have been last year. We went to a game, and it was a great game. We had great seats, great parking, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, we we walked around the stadium. Uh, so we're walking. So if you know City Field, there's the Shea Bridge in the back behind the center field wall. and behind the seats. So we're walking through there, and there are one thing that I've always had a problem with at the ball game. I'm paying my way into your stadium. I don't like to be solicited to. Yeah. Newsday, the Long Island newspaper, they're offering Met hats and Met other paraphernalia if you sign if you get a subscription to Newsday. Sorry, uh, they're oil companies. Oh, get a quote from us. Buy our switch your oil company to our oil company and you'll get some kind of perk or whatever. Uh, I don't like to be solicited to when I bought my way into your stadium to watch a game. That's like me going to the movie theater and people walking up and down the aisle trying to sell you shit. Um, but even worse than that, so we're walking through the Shea Bridge, and as we get to the other side, uh, all of a sudden I get solicited to these youngsters. I don't know if it was FanDuel or DraftKings or, all of a sudden these, advertising became a very big thing at baseball stadiums, and not just the Mets. It's everywhere. Uh, the Mets, my favorite section to sit in City Field is the middle section. That's where, if you saw my video with Davey Cretin, we actually sat in that middle section. That's called, I think, the Caesars section. But basically, it's an advertisement to Caesars Casino. Um, you know what? Basically, it's like a way of promoting gambling. So, so that's bad enough. But now you're promoting FanDuel and DraftKings, and these young people are trying to get me to soliciting me to get my own account. You know, not for nothing. I'm there with my boss. You know what? I have to be politically correct and I have to do the right thing. And I just politely said, I'm sorry, I don't gamble. Hey, you know what? They didn't just leave well enough alone. They're like, oh, are you sure? Trying to, it's sales 101, overcoming objections. I said, I'm sorry, I don't gamble. It's against everything I believe in, which is a crock of shit. I mean, I during the Super Bowl, I'll buy Super Bowl boxes. I used to play the football sheets during the season. The companies that I worked in, but I think the I only won like once or twice, so I had better luck picking the boxes. But again, it's luck. Um, but my point being, if you're going to sit there and you're going to solicit Caesar's Palace, FanDuel, DraftKings, it, this is Major League Baseball soliciting that gambling. Meanwhile, you're telling one of the greatest players that you've ever had grace the game, oh, you're permanently ineligible. You know what? I think to me, that is the height of hypocrisy. Shame on you, Major League Baseball. It's all or nada. Theme of this show. Uh, I think it is about time. With that being said, you're going to open it up and allow gambling. You know what? I think you should let him back in. Uh, you know, Gambling has, to me, is just as bad as alcoholism, can be just as bad as drug addiction. It's an addiction in unto itself. And you know what? Pete Rose, I would say he was a gambling addict. It's one of those things. Gambling, and Oscar Madison once said it best, there's no such thing as a sure thing. That's why they call it gambling. And you want to know something? More often than not, most average people are going to lose at gambling. The professional gambler, the gambler that knows how to win, they usually kick them out of their casinos. because they feel like they're cheating. Meanwhile, they're cheating you. I mean, what chance do you have against those one-armed bandits? Seriously. That's why I never play them. The only thing I play if I walk into a casino is I'll play roulette just for the fun of it. But I will only play the mechanical roulette. I will not play electronic roulette because you don't know uh, what's behind the programming, behind the scenes. Um, so that being said, you're knowingly and willingly promoting this Major League Baseball. You're promoting people to become gambling. Some people that you're promoting to this can become gambling addicts. It's basically, again, it's like an episode that I saw on The Sopranos called Chasing It. An episode where Tony Soprano, he's losing at gambling, so he's got to gamble again, and he's got to double his money to try and win it back and break even. But the more you chase it, the more you lose, and the more you chances are people have lost their homes, they've lost their cars, they've lost their businesses, they've lost their arms and their legs to their Shylocks. Uh, so that's why my opinion has changed. Induct him already and just end this nonsense and end the hypocrisy. This is Jack Toledano. What are your thoughts? I'd love to know. Have a good one, folks. And we'll talk soon. Coming up, more music related content, hopefully later this week. Good night, all.